Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to have you here. Let me start by introducing myself, and then we'll get this started. My name is Karan Yadav. I'm a parent and an Oak Grove school board member. Our topic of discussion today is the school as a living experiment over the past 50 years. And our panel includes 3 women who've collectively served Oak Grove for over 100 years. That's pretty incredible. And all of them in different capacities. But for this conversation, we'll focus on their experiences as their positional leaders and stakeholders in different roles at the school, and specifically as their roles as head of school. So let me start with introduction. Start with Meredy. Meredy has been at Oak Grove since 1991. Roles have included being a parent, dorm parent, teacher, high school director, head of school, director of teaching and learning, and currently a teacher development coach. Welcome, Meredy. Karen, who probably needs no introduction for this group here, but I'll still do it, has been at Oak Grove since 1980. Roles have included homeroom teacher, PE teacher, dorm parent, director of elementary and junior high, board member, trustee at the KFA, junior high human development teacher, and of course, a grandparent. Welcome, Karen. And then Jodi. Jodi's has been with the school since 2005. Roles have included development, operations, assistant head of school, parent of 2 of Oak Grove alumni, and currently head of high school. In the fall, she will also attain a distinct pleasure of being a grandparent of an incoming student to student Poppy Doss. So, welcome, Jodi. Karen, we'll start with you, just in the order of the number of years of experience that we've had between the 3 of you. What are your thoughts about the fact that the whole idea of school as a living experiment over the last 50 years? How would you characterize it in your 46 years of that association amongst those 50 years?
The word experiment, that's a little problematic, right? It's kind of rings like Petri dish or a laboratory. And the school is an organism. It's a living organism, same as a child or a critter going through its phases of life, and now it's 50. So I prefer to say the school as a living organism, or just as living. Forget the word organism. So that's one thing about the question. But yes, there is something experimental about it, because when it started, Kay recommended that the teacher lived upstairs and the classroom was downstairs. And there were 8 students. And so the teacher was there at night, and the kids had gone home, and that was the teacher's living room, was the classroom. And so after a few years of that, the experiment failed, right? Things had to change because it was not sustainable. You couldn't make ends meet with eight kids. And you couldn't sustain a teacher without her own kitchen or without her own living space that was bigger than this stage, right? So things change. And yes, it is experimental, but it's not a petri dish as sort. I mean.
Can I add?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll jump in, right?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I just wanted to share that one of the interesting things that happened when we were asked to do this is we met in Jodi's office, and we had really like a hilarious time together, the 3 of us. In fact, we were likened ourselves to sort of 3 witches, with this sort of, stirring the pot like a brew. And of course, pretty much like the first 30 minutes of our conversation was about the difficulty of explaining what the school was. That, this idea, is it an experiment? Is it a laboratory? Is it an oasis? Is it an organism? Coming up with, I love that you just said living, that it's living. But it immediately made us aware of how hard it is to talk about the school. And what came to my mind was that joke where nobody gets it. You're laughing, it's hilarious in your opinion, and nobody gets it, and you have to say, you kind of had to be there. It's very much like that in my experience, that you kind of have to be here. You kind of have to be here moment to moment, day to day, year to year, watching and experiencing all of these very particular moments that aren't necessarily strung together into a coherent whole, and yet somehow they are. If you were at the last talk at the end, when Gianni told his story about just coming back from, is it Zion? Yeah, Bryce Canyon. And, the story of this boy who's sharing all this information about his geological knowledge, and Gianni says, I have a question, what makes it beautiful to us? Well, the fact that Gianni had this sensitivity to just pose that question and leave it be, and then they just hiked on and didn't do anything more except that that student came back to it 3 days later, having that percolated in his mind for those 3 days. That's like one moment in millions of moments that happen here all the time because of who we are as this living thing. Right. And yet, there's no way to sort of just say it in a nutshell. So we really had that as our first problem, is how to even talk about the school.
Yeah, for sure. Is this one on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say, in the way, now it definitely is, I would say that it is an experiment in the sense that if we are awake to what is happening, then we are open to whatever direction that might go. So maybe one without a defined purpose in that way.
Yeah, maybe the lag, the opposition to rigidity kind of gives it the other side of the equation, saying we are open to, quote, experimenting different ideas. We'll move on to the next question, because I think we'll thread all these ideas through these questions that we have. Jodi, I'd like to start with you, but in this particular context, when you were serving as currently, of course, the head of school, and you've had multiple positions at the school, how did you understand your role, and how did it come about in terms of you really kind of reflecting on that role and really working through, continuing to build a better version of the school, or kind of the evolution of the school?
Yeah. This was another thing that we really talked about, is how we see our role as the positional leader of the school. And I really think what makes most sense to me is like being a doula, a birth doula, where you kind of set the environment. I'm not a doula or a midwife or anything like that, but I think about it as you're setting the environment. You're really clear about what might be supportive, what might be helpful, and also probably equally clear about what isn't going to be helpful. So you're not the doctor, you're not the midwife, but you're someone there to kind of support and guide and to hold the space in a way to allow something to happen, and at times to prevent something from happening.
I think we all had a very similar sense of this idea of, I kind of call it servant leadership as well, where you're providing a container, or you are partly the container that is holding the space, as Jodi's already used those words, holding space for whatever that experiment of living that we're doing is contained within. And I agree with Jodi too that it is also protecting it from some things that you don't want to go into that space too, in order to provide this environment. But the idea of service, because the leadership model that most of us have in our minds that we're used to in the world is like you're in the lead, you're taking charge, you're telling everybody what to do, and it's not like that at all. It's not like that at all. It's really seeing what is needed and serving all the constituents that you have in that bowl.
Yeah. And trying to not protect is the wrong word, but support the teachers.
Mm-hmm.
That's so important because people don't realize what kind of job it is. I mean, it is so big. It consumes people, not just in the day with the numbers of students you're tending to, but at night when you're at home trying to prepare for the next day, given what happened today, you've got to prepare for that particular student or dynamic tomorrow. So it's this whirlwind of trying to meet the students' needs and the parents' needs, and then in light of the intention of the school, well, how do you do that? It's the academics is the easy part, and check, we can do that. But the other part that is dealing with conditioning and compassion and inquiry, we're all in the same boat in that way. We're all learning how to do that and figure that out.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So, Meredy, this one's for you. We'll start with you. As you were preparing for this conversation, with Karen and Jodi, how did you identify, or kind of what were the common challenges that kind of run the theme for the last almost 50 years, and both in terms of working with your assumptions and dispelling myths? Give us some thoughts on that.
Well, it's interesting because, again, if you were at the last session, the very end, some questions came up that just got passed on to us as a panel, and I was thinking, like, well, there it is, right there. That's part of the challenge. Mm-hmm. Is that everyone has their idea of what you're supposed to be, what the school should look like, what should happen. A lot of people have very strong opinions about what we're doing wrong, and are happy to voice them frequently. So I think one of the things we all have experienced while we were in the role of head of school is the idea that we've come to some brilliant way of doing things that's kind of perfect and working, because it's not like that. It's really messy and ongoing, and some days it's working and sometimes it's not working, and sometimes you live for those moments, like I said, because in between, there's messiness going on. It's the idea, for me, I think the biggest challenge I had, and partly still do have, is that there's this idea that the school is like a thing, that it's something that a family will come with a lot of ideals about what they want for their child and themselves, and it's this idea that somehow you'll come to the school and you'll be able to be given something that you then take away. And that is absolutely not what happens here. But it's hard, like, for people to understand that when you come into the school, when you become part of the school, you are the school. You are another component. of that living thing. So we are co-creating this together, like with everybody, all the time, every moment. So sort of dispelling that illusion that the school is sort of out there as a thing that you can get something with. I think I met with that many, many, many times, and I'm pretty sure you two did too, in terms of a challenge.
Could I jump in on
And
that?
please jump in.
Because there's this thing that happened at the beginning of the school when they made a big, beautiful wooden hand-carved sign and put it down at the bottom of the driveway, and it said Krishnamurti Education Center. And Krishnamurti came one day and looked at it, and he goes, "Get rid of that thing. Who's going to ever come to this school if they have this Krishnamurti Education Center?" So then it became Oak Grove School. But still, the word school has problems, all kinds of connotations. Just look at what the word school does to a person when you remember your schooling. So we could have probably come up with a better, or just called it Oak Grove and get rid of the school. I mean, a lot of the schools in India just call themselves Rishi Valley or Chennai, or I don't know. I mean, it just seems like that word school is problematic because it has associations. But along those lines, there's this, I don't know, I guess it's a bit of a story about how the school used to invite parents to come, and they would think that it was a independent school. They were paying tuition, so they would drop their kids off and not be expected to participate, right? Drop them off, see you later, pick them up at 3 o'clock. But it was a different kind of school, and trying to communicate that with our parents, like, you're participating, you're part of the triangle. Child, parent, teacher. We're in this together. And so eventually we had to write up a parent participation agreement and get parents to sign it. It was 2 pages long. You will participate in meetings, you will help with the fundraising, you know, blah, blah, blah. So parent participation was critical. Yeah. Still is.
Still is.
Yeah.
I do want to say something about this idea of the school, because I do think it's important to say we are a school and we're also a business. And those pieces, there's a lot of tension there. And we need to follow laws, and we're accredited, and we have to pay bills, and we have people that rely on us to have the funds and the resources so that they can have their paychecks and support their lives. And so there is this piece about our role, our shared experience, that it also has to be run well. And it's not separate from this other piece. It's happening at the same time. And sometimes one actually informs the other, right? So sometimes we are looking at something that seems very practical, that is a business consideration or a school consideration, but that perhaps we can look at it a little bit differently, and we can make decisions that maybe aren't in the realm of best practices, but maybe what is responsive to what the school needs in this moment.
Thanks, Jodi. Which kind of brings me to the next question, which is related. And Meredy, will start with you on this one. As you work through those challenges, of course, there are, I wouldn't say conflict, but conundrums, right? Your ability to kind of balance a bunch of different aspects of running a school, you know, understanding and solving it in context of what the school's intent is. What were those conundrums that you had to deal with as you were, you had multiple different roles at the school, even now?
Yeah, there are many, and in fact, listening to all the talks over this weekend, I think it comes up frequently in trying to understand through our study of the teachings when certain things that Krishnamurti would say just seem so paradoxical. And it's the same thing. It's like, okay, start a school, which has to have an excellence in those words. Academic excellence. But it also must transform mankind at the same time. And there's no blueprint, no method. Go.
You're off.
And 50 years later, it's still like day, I wasn't here on day one, but I'm imagining that it's still like day one, where we're still just moment to moment, still trying to figure that out. Like, well, how do you do that, I think we have learned over time through experimentation that there are things that work better than other things. There's lots of specifics in that that I don't want to go completely into, but we did come up with several years ago the Arts of Living and Learning, which is somewhat of a framework or a pointer of some of the things that we know must be included in what we do, but it's not a method. It's not a how-to. And really, the crux of what we do is through relationship. And that is happening, as I said, like every moment, we are colliding with each other here. We're, student to student, student to teacher, parents. We've got the whole world in this microcosm. All of the potential conflicts that go on outside of the school go on inside the school because they go on inside us. So we're confronted with that. We're dealing with that every single day, as are every other person in the school and in life in general. I did want to mention one thing that I really it really resonated with me. Something, if anybody attended or saw on the live stream, Connie's presentation yesterday, she mentioned, actually, she used the word experiment. She said she had participated in an experiment where she received some sort of shocking news, and she was to just not react, just sort of watch what happened to her internally for I think it was a minute and a half, 90 seconds. Well, we have a thing here that we play with the younger kids. We call it pause, put your attention within for 60 seconds. And that one little thing, right, to just ask, not just a student, but a parent, a teacher, anyone in our community, like to pause before responding or reacting, and just watch what's going on. That happens all the time here in this experimental way, and all of the learning that happens from that is phenomenal in terms of being a school that's trying to also work with all these other things that are not the academics,
It reminds me of the other piece that comes up a lot is silence. The classes start with silence. Assemblies start with silence. Guest speakers start with silence. So it's that quieting. And it's quite unique, to have a couple hundred kids sitting around and they're all silent. And it's very sweet and very softening. It seems to go inside them in some way that you can't explain, but it seems right. It just kind of grew out of the history of the school. I mean, in the early days, we would take our shoes off to go into the pavilion. That's just what you did for 10 years. School grew. It got to be like, where's my shoes? Nobody could find them. They were hiding them. It got to be a little chaotic. So that tradition went by the wayside. So traditions come and go, but the silent thing seems to have stayed.
Jodi?
I'm still kind of thinking about conundrums, but then I really am also reflecting on the silence. And one of the things that I feel is so profound about the silence we do is it's not for a purpose. We're not saying have a moment of silence to reflect on where you are, or who you are, or for anyone else's benefit. It's just silence, which in itself just feels really profound.
Thank you. Jodi, we'll start with you on this one because you are kind of in the hot seat these days anyways. What are the common crises that you faced, and how does that, of course everybody faces crisis, but in the context of the school and its philosophy, our approach towards handling those crises, how do you manage it? So I'd love for you to start with the common crisis and then Oak Grove's approach, and how do you manage them?
Okay, so this is my 9th year as head of school, and I can say with certainty there's no standard crisis, just so you know. And we've had many of them because we are part of the world, and we've had to navigate a lot of things that we didn't see coming. And one thing I have learned is that every time we go through something, and sometimes we'll do like an after-action review to kind of say, how did we respond to that? Should we have done this differently or that differently? And every time we come away with takeaways, and then the next thing happens, and you try to apply those takeaways, and it never works. It's like every situation is like every person. There's complexity and nuance in every single situation, and so I think the challenge really is to, as much as possible, to be in total observation of what this situation needs. Mm-hmm. Who's going to be impacted first? How are we going to support that? What are the possible, ways that we can respond to this? How quickly do we need to respond? Who needs to be notified? So it feels like there's no one way to manage that other than just be awake.
Karen?
Yeah, crises. I mean, there's a developmental thing that comes into my mind about at what age, because the kids bring things in and then they'll want to talk about them. Like when I was teaching 7th grade, the Deepwater Horizon thing happened, and they all came in and they just couldn't believe it, and it was something they had to do something about, and they raised money and sent it off, and it was just something they had to do. It seemed to just grow from their concern, and I think that happens a lot. I mean, I know it's happened too many times to even mention. That's just one personal remembrance of crisis. But then, I mean, we're dealing with death, divorce, all kinds of family traumas, conflicts in countries, war. I mean, you name it. The school is trying to hold these kids' questions developmentally appropriately, which is a real challenge because some kid might come in with a bunch of information and the other kids don't have a clue what they're talking about, so you kind of go, okay, well, let's just remove you for a minute. And because some kids might not be prepared for this information. So there's that kind of challenge to address the crisis and their concerns as children, but also to protect them in a way that feels appropriate to their age.
I want to say something about our community without it sounding too romantic. I think whether the crises are these individual family things that come in, or whether they're the really big ones that have just like hit as a school, when we had huge fire, we had COVID, really huge things that we had to deal with. I know in my era it was probably finances. We went through a huge financial crisis while I was head of school. But the response of our community is in the present, as Jodi's saying, that sort of present response has always been like just so caring. I mean, you really feel like everyone who is part of this community just loves this land, this place, the other people being part of it, and everyone seems to want to step up. It's really humbling and beautiful to see that. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. So last questions before we open up for the audience. I know we've talked about experiment. We'll talk about, that it's an evolution, that it's an organism. But what has stayed constant in the last 50 years? Karen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. You know what I'm going to say? I mean, apart from Krishnamurti's intent, the land, the campus, the beauty, it's so constant, it's so grounding, it's so perfect. The vista and the programs that the school has had for taking the kids out into the wild, into wilderness for extended periods of time. Nothing like it. Just outstanding. I mean, it makes me cry. I'm so happy that our kids have had that, because it's deep in their hearts, the love for trees and animals and real deep care, real deep natural stewardship that just grows out of living on this campus. So that's it for me.
Yeah, I think actually Siddhartha mentioned this too, similarly, the connection to nature, that it's all of the schools are in beautiful places, so nature as a teacher is definitely a constant. I'd add to that, I mean, it is part of the intent of the school, obviously, but I'd say that that the mirror of relationship, that we are learning always through our connectedness to each other on a level playing field, that there's no hierarchy around that. There's no authority. There's, as the teacher or a head of school or whatever it is, we are all learning together through that mirror of relationship. And I think that's definitely one of the through lines.
Very true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say yes, for sure. The campus it's more than a teacher. It's one of the things that we notice when people come for the first time. We often joke if they don't mention the campus, we're like, what's wrong with them? They don't get it. Definitely, one of the things that I think a lot about, and one of the things that makes me really excited to be a part of this school, is the parents. And I was re-listening to an interview that Kay did right before the school opened, and also a talk that he did that same year. and talking about why Oak Grove will include the parents. And it's not easy. You are a parent. You're easy. But not all those relationships are easy, because we come at it sometimes from a different perspective. And anyone who has been a parent knows the deep connection and love you have for your children and what you want for them. And so we're navigating their relationship with their child, their hopes, their dreams for their child, and also, what is needed. And so sometimes those relationships can be very difficult, and I have definitely felt some of the most profound moments I have had in this role has been through some of those challenges and getting to a good place from something that was really difficult, and sticking with that and learning to quiet my own ideas about how something should be, and really looking together. And it's really amazing to have that level of insight with someone that you've been maybe missing.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Jodi. All right, we'll open it up for questions. But as you think about your questions, we would love for you to reflect on a couple of things. Just reflect on your role as a student or an educator or a parent, and think about what you just heard really resonates with you, but then of course follow that up with a question. Okay.
So is that like turning
Turning it to the crowd? Yeah.
Take a moment.
All right. Meanwhile, I can take the questions online. So the online questions. So the first one that has come is that, what is the school doing to enable other schools to take Krishnamurti's teachings about education? Jodi, you want to take that?
Could you repeat that?
What is the school doing to enable other schools to really take Krishnamurti's teachings about education? Disseminating Krishnamurti's ideas to other schools.
I mean, I would say the most obvious thing is just doing what we're doing, and having people see and know what's happening here. We don't explicitly work to share the teachings or what we're doing to influence other schools, but we're certainly a part of professional organizations with lots of other schools. We're very communicative about who we are and why we do what we do. So I would say that's probably the most explicit thing that we do.
Okay. Meredy, I'll pass this one to you. Where do you find Kay's approach breaking down in practice, right? Especially around performance, disciplines, outcomes. Where do you see that conflict playing out in practical settings?
The question is where do
you find Kay's approach breaking down in practice, especially around performance, disciplines, and other topics?
Breaking down in practice.
Yes.
Well, first of all, you have to have like Kay's approach, right? Which we, is problematic in and of itself. Where does it break down? Well, I guess when again, it comes back to like when there's an ideal that something should be a particular way, and it's not going that way. That's something that we all find very difficult. And we're all human. So yeah, I mean, we break down all the time because we are human, because we do react without taking that moment to reflect. We're we're all that mess ourselves as the adults in our community too. So we make mistakes. I'd say one of the things that we're also really good at is what's called a do-over. Whether you're, in the preschool or the high school, everyone has an opportunity to say, hey, I shouldn't have said that. Sorry, I need to take a moment and come back, and repair. We want to repair when we go wrong. I don't know if that answered the question or the question, but
thank you. That's really great.
I love repair. So, what are some essential or maybe non-essential qualities that your teachers have that are particular to you, so not general qualities that teachers have, that you would want to, for example, an educator who works with very little humans, 0 to 3, to have or to embody?
I think, I'll start with that. I think whether it's little kids or big kids, there has to be love and affection. True love and affection.
Okay.
Within that teacher.
Would that be something that is general or specific to the Krishnamurti school?
Oh, I think that's specific.
Yeah.
I've taught in other schools with teachers that definitely don't love those students. They're not there because they really have that sense of responsibility and care.
They might love their subject.
They might love the subject, yeah.
But another thing that comes to mind as far as a skill set is language capacity. I'm not multi-language. That's handy too, but I was thinking more of use of language in an intelligent way, like with the nonviolent communication model that's gone through Oak Grove for years with Marshall Rosenberg present, working with parents and teachers and students. And then with the young children, the familiarity of other wonderful primary school teachers like Montessori and Steiner and Reggio Emilio and all these other people who have given so much to primary education. So, just a familiarity with a breadth of educative possibilities.
And I can probably add more as a parent in terms of what I see differently. I think when we came to this school, of course, one thing that, something that you reflect on very quickly is you address the teacher by first name basis, right? So that kind of breaks down the hierarchy between the teacher and the student. And I think back to Gianni's story about the Southwest trip, that was the moment when the student became the teacher and actually was talking to Gianni about kind of sharing his knowledge. And I think that continuous flexibility in about that not only is the teacher teaching, but also learning from the students at the same time, I particularly find extremely unique to this school. That, of course, you are great at the subject you're teaching, but you really have to have that compassion to learn continuously.
Can I just say, I wanted to add on to that, because that was the first thing that popped into my head, was a humble learner. Mm-hmm. That if the teacher isn't coming in to learn, then we kind of have nowhere else to go, right? And then it's all those pieces. It's the love, it's the language, it's seeing children as competent, capable human beings that are worthy of respect and care. And there's a lot that goes into that, but if you're not starting there, I feel like there isn't really anywhere else to go.
Thank you so much.
Of course. We have time for 2 more questions.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a good follow-up for the question that you're just answering. But what factors do you think play the largest role in seeing that your teachers continue to bloom as they, go through the rigors of each school year and acquire each, challenge that's natural to the cause?
Yeah, we really value opportunities to grow and to learn together and also individually. So it's something that we're always looking at. We're always talking about, what are your growth areas? Everyone is growing all the time, and identifying specifics, but also generally as a whole school. And we really see, I said this at the tour we did earlier, we really see every single adult that works here as a teacher. So our maintenance staff, our kitchen staff, our front office staff, we all do professional development together. We all are engaging with students. We're all growing, and we're hopefully feeding back to each other areas where we need growth. And also trying to find, just like you would with a child or a student, areas of interest and supporting them in that as much as you can.
We also have a teaching and learning sort of department, and part of the role of that department, like I'm actually a teacher development coach now, and part of that department goes out and actually works also individually with teachers. We're available to teachers who are needing some support, but that follow-up on setting goals every single year is followed up by a number of us who are in that role to make sure that, I mean, a lot of people are probably aware that, even veteran teachers can kind of like fall asleep at the wheel, because it's like you just keep doing the same thing year after year. That absolutely is never going to happen here. I mean, we just don't allow that to happen here. Everyone is always on an arc of learning, no matter where you are in your career.
Thank you. I have two questions, but before that I would like to make a comment. I had the privilege to be here when the school was founded in 1975. And I must say, after these 50 years, it's incredible how this school blossomed. When I just walked through the campus today, I really felt there was a creative energy here. It's just not creating through the mind, but through a really creative energy and creative living, because this school is not similar to any other school. It's something really absolutely unique and beautiful. Okay, my two questions. The first one, Karen, you mentioned about the silence you have before all the classrooms and the assemblies. Is that just a minute or half a minute or a second? And would you consider something like they do in Trichy Valley? At the end of every school, they sit in nature quietly for half an hour. I just want to say, when I was there, I felt it was very important and incredible, beautiful. So anyway, that's my first question. And the second question, I was asked to repeat it. Has the school created something really completely different in the human being? Or did it bring about different human beings as Krishnamurti intended? Thank you.
Do you want to talk about PCT in response to the first one? The first 15 minutes of the day?
Yeah, I think we can point to that as well. I think in terms of the silence, we don't have a certain amount of time. So whoever's supporting or facilitating that moment kind of chooses how long. So it can be brief and it could be rather long. Great idea about ending the day in silence. I don't know if that's something that could happen, but I've always been inspired at the Indian schools how they end their assemblies in silence. Something that we have played with a little bit here. And then we do have, Meredy was pointing to, at the beginning of every school day, the first 15 minutes is pastoral care time. We call that PCT. And it is the transition from home to school. And the idea is to greet the students first as human beings, and then as learners, and also to build certain skills, emotional intelligence skills, So teachers are given really wide guidance on that. So all the teachers do it very differently. Some teachers do watercolors, some do silent walks, some do prompts and journal writing. So it's really specific to the teacher who's holding that space. And then, does that mean I don't have to answer the other one?
Oh, yeah, no, I have to answer to the other one. Just kidding. I don't know is the answer to the second question. I mean, I don't know how you would measure that. I don't know how you would, if what part of the intention of Krishnamurti are we talking about if he said, a total transformation of humankind doesn't look like it's happened so far, but, we're in a process. I mean, we're not, I've never felt like we're going to just sort of get there. We're in a process of what we're doing, living it.
Yeah, we might just be the husk.
Yeah.
And the seed is out there somewhere, or the seed is still in the husk. We don't know at what point somebody, I think it's a really bad question.
But I like the first part of what you said. About the 50 years.
But the bad part is that it's impossible. Maybe it makes you ponder. I'm just wondering if it makes me ponder, is there anybody out there who's gone through the school who's kind of gotten it? But it's a living thing. So how would you measure it? Maybe one day they seem to be handling things really well, and the next day they fall apart. But then they repair it, so then they're handling it again. You know what I mean? Life is this flow, fluid, ups and downs, and wow, I don't know, maybe it isn't a bad question. I have to think about that, Ulrich.
We'll ponder it.
Yes, we'll have enough time to ponder. Jodi, Karen, and Meredy, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.